Welcome to Edgecore Enterprise Switches training program. In this video, we are going to introduce congestion control. Congestion control is a mechanism that controls the packets into the Ethernet switch to avoid congestive collapse in a network. Edgecore provides three measures for congestion control. The first one is rate limit. The second is storm control. And the third is automatic traffic control. The first section will introduce the rate limit feature. It will include the basic introduction and example of CLI setting. This page introduces the rate limit feature on the Edgecore switches. The rate limit can restrict the receiving or transiting rate on specific ports to follow the requirements when doing the deployment. Packets that exceed the acceptable amount of traffic are dropped. By default, there is no rate limit configured on the switch. The switch will receive and transmit the traffic based on its maximum capability. In the example of case 1, port 1 receives 1G traffic and doesn't limit how much traffic is received, then forwards all traffic to port 2. As well as port 1 transmits all traffic that was originally from port 2. For meeting some networking requirements, Edgecore Switch provides the rate limit feature to restrict the traffic rate on specific ports. In the example of case 2, we set port 1 to limit the receiving rate to 100 megabits per second and the transmitting rate to 200 megabits on port 1. Then port 1 will only receive the traffic with 100 megabits per second and forward the traffic to port 2. In another direction, port 1 will only transmit the traffic with 200 megabits per second. This page shows the example of CLI setting based on case 2 shown on the previous page. Step 1. Enter the interface that you want to configure the rate limit, in our example, is port 1. Step 2. Configure the input rate to 100 megabits per second by typing the command rate limit input of 100,000 kilobit per second. Step 3. Configure the output rate to 200 megabits per second by typing the command rate limit output of 200,000 kilobit per second. After configuring the rate limit, you can use the show command to check if your configuration is correct. You can type show interface switch port Ethernet 1/1 to show related port settings. As a result, you can see ingress rate limit is enabled and the threshold is 100,000 kilobits per second. The egress rate limit is enabled and the threshold is 200,000 kilobits per second. When you want to remove rate limit settings, use the no form to disable it, just like the example. This section introduces the storm control feature on the Edgecore Enterprise Switch. It includes the basic introduction and an example of the CLI setting. Basic introduction of storm control. As everyone knows the purpose and operation of broadcast, the switch will copy the broadcast packets to all other ports when it receives the broadcast packets on any one port. In normal conditions, the flooding packets, including broadcast, multicast, and unknown unicast, can be handled and forwarded well. However, there are always some unexpected situations that happen. For example, the switch may receive huge and continuous broadcast traffic and keep forwarding all broadcast traffic to all other ports, and then the problem happens. Take example in case 1, port 1 receives huge and continuous broadcast traffic from port 1, and the switch forwards the same broadcast traffic to port 2, port 3, and port 4. At the time, the normal traffic between port 2 and port 3 was impacted. The hosts connected on port 2 and port 3 may detect lower throughput or they cannot connect to each other since they also get impacted by the broadcast traffic. Edgecore Switch implements the storm control feature to solve the problem. The switch can set a threshold to limit the maximum number of broadcast packets to be forwarded to all other ports and reduce the impacts on port 2 and port 3. Except for the broadcast traffic to be managed by storm control, the multicast and unknown unicast traffic can be managed as well. This page shows the syntax of the storm control CLI command. We can protect our network from traffic storms by setting a threshold for broadcast, multicast, or unknown unicast traffic. Any packets exceeding the specified threshold will then be dropped. Step 1. Enter the interface that you want to configure storm control, in our example here, is port 1. Step 2. Configure the broadcast packet rate to 1000 packets per second. Step 3. Configure the multicast packet rate to 1000 packets per second. Step 4. Configure the unknown unicast packet rate to 1000 packets per second. After configuring storm control, you can use the show command to check if your configuration is correct. You can type show interface switch port Ethernet 1/1 to show related port settings. As a result, you can see the broadcast, multicast, and unknown unicast thresholds are enabled and the threshold is 1000 packets per second. When you want to remove storm control settings, use the no form to disable it, just like the example. This section will introduce the auto traffic control. It includes the basic introduction and example of the CLI setting. Before introducing the auto traffic control function, let me show you the difference between storm control and auto traffic control. First, the trigger mode for storm control is hardware level, while the auto traffic control is software level. Second, storm control monitors the broadcast, multicast, and unknown unicast traffic. But the auto traffic control only monitors broadcast and multicast. Third, when traffic exceeds the threshold specified for broadcast, multicast, or unknown unicast, the packets exceeding the threshold are dropped for the storm control function. For auto traffic control, there are two measures to control the broadcast or multicast storm. You can apply rate control or shut down the port when ingress traffic exceeds the threshold and the apply timer expires. Fourth, there is no notification for storm control while auto traffic control provides 4 kinds of SNMP traps. Fifth, the unit of measurement is different. The storm control uses packet per second, and the ATC uses kilo packet per second. The last one. The storm control can apply on normal ports or trunk while the ATC can only apply to normal ports. Automatic traffic control, short in ATC, configures bounding thresholds for broadcast and multicast storms which can be used to trigger rate control or to shut down a port. Look at this figure. The x-axis is time, and the y-axis is Ethernet broadcast or multicast traffic. ATC needs to configure 2 thresholds. The first is the alarm fire threshold, and the other one is the alarm clear threshold. This curve represents Ethernet broadcast or multicast traffic. When ingress traffic exceeds the alarm fire threshold, ATC sends a storm alarm fire trap and logs it. When the traffic falls beneath the lower threshold, ATC sends a storm alarm clear trap. ATC keeps monitoring the broadcast or multicast traffic. If the traffic exceeds the alarm fire threshold and the apply timer expires, a traffic control response is applied, and a traffic control apply trap is sent and logged. The traffic control response could be rate control or shutdown of the port depending on your setting. Once the ATC starts rate control, the broadcast traffic that exceeds the alarm clear threshold will be dropped. If rate control has been configured as a control response and auto control release is enabled, rate control will be discontinued after the traffic rate has fallen beneath the lower threshold and the release timer has expired. Please note that if a port has been shut down by a control response, it will not be re-enabled by automatic traffic control. It can only be manually re-enabled using manual control release. I'll introduce the CLI command in the next slides and show you how to configure ATC step by step. This command sets the upper threshold for ingress storm traffic. When the broadcast or multicast is beyond the threshold, a storm alarm fire trap will be sent. If the broadcast or multicast storm is continuous and the apply timer expires, the auto traffic control response will be triggered. If you want to disable it, use the no form to restore the default setting. In our example, we set the trigger threshold for automatic storm control to 255 kilo packets for broadcast traffic on port 1 and 255 kilo packets for multicast traffic on port 2. This command sets the lower threshold for ingress storm traffic. If the storm alarm fire trap has been triggered, once the storm falls beneath the threshold, a storm alarm clear trap will be sent. If the storm control response rate control has been triggered, the broadcast or multicast traffic exceeding the alarm clear threshold will be dropped. This example sets the clear threshold for automatic storm control to 155 kilopackets for broadcast traffic on port 1 and 155 kilopackets for multicast traffic on port 2. This command sets the time at which to apply the control response after ingress traffic has exceeded the upper threshold. The timer starts when the broadcast or multicast traffic is beyond the alarm fire threshold. If you want to remove the setting, please use No Form to disable this feature. In our example, we set the apply timer to 200 seconds for all ports and use the Show Auto Traffic Control command to check the setting. The broadcast and multicast apply timer has been configured to 200 seconds. This command sets the time at which to release the control response after ingress traffic has fallen beneath the lower threshold. In other words, the control response will be released when the timer expires, which starts when the rate control is in progress and ingress traffic drops below the lower threshold. If you want to remove the setting, please use No Form to disable this feature. This example sets the release timer to 800 seconds for all ports, and we use Auto Traffic Control to display the release timer, which has changed to 800 seconds. This command enables auto traffic control for broadcast or multicast storms. If you want to remove the setting, please use No Form to disable this feature. In this example, we enable the auto traffic control for broadcast and multicast for port 1, and only multicast for port 2. You can use Show Auto Traffic Control Interface followed by the interface number to display the interface configuration settings and storm control status for the specified port. You can see we enabled the auto traffic control for port 1 and port 2 on the previous slide. And the parameters here are all per port settings. For example, the broadcast or multicast control can be configured separately. And you can configure response actions, auto release control, threshold, and SNMP trap according to your needs. We'll introduce how to use these commands in the next slides. When the upper threshold is exceeded and the apply timer expires, a control response will be triggered based on this command. You can set the control action to either rate control or shut down the port. When the control response is set to rate control by this command, the rate limits are determined by the Auto Traffic Control Alarm Clear Threshold command. If a port has been shut down by a control response, it will not be re-enabled by automatic traffic control. It can only be manually re-enabled using the Auto Traffic Control Release command. Auto Traffic Control provides 4 types of traps to notify users that the broadcast or multicast traffic exceeds the upper threshold, or falls beneath the lower threshold, and the traffic control is applied or released. The first one is the ATC broadcast or multicast alarm fire trap. When broadcast or multicast traffic exceeds the upper threshold, this trap will be sent. If you don't need this trap, you can use the No Form to disable it. The second one is ATC Broadcast Alarm Clear Trap. This command sends a trap when broadcast traffic falls beneath the lower threshold after a broadcast alarm fire trap has been triggered. Use the No Form to disable this trap. When broadcast traffic exceeds the upper threshold for automatic storm control and the apply timer expires, the ATC Broadcast Control Apply Trap will be sent, and traffic control action will be triggered. If you don't need this trap, you can use the No Form to disable it. The ATC Broadcast Control Release Trap is sent when broadcast traffic falls beneath the lower threshold after a storm control response has been triggered, and the release timer expires. You can disable it by the No Form. We used the Show Auto Traffic Control Interface command to display port 1 and port 2 settings. You can find that our settings in the previous slide are correct. Please note that if you configured your response action to shut down, the auto release control will be disabled. You need to release a shutdown port manually by Auto Traffic Control Broadcast or Multicast Control Release command. Let me introduce it in the next slide. This command can be used to manually stop a control response of rate limiting or port shutdown any time after the specified action has been triggered. Thanks for your attention on this course with us. If you have any problem, please contact our support team.